Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Sahleen, and I'm a software engineer on the language engineering team at the Wikimedia Foundation. So I've been here about 3 months, and before that I was a globalization engineer for 5 years at Adobe. And before that I taught early Chinese history, thought, and religion at Stanford University, a long time ago. So today I want to talk to you about the MediaWiki Content Translation extension. It's something the language engineering team has been working on for a while now, and I'm pretty excited about it because I think it has a real potential to contribute to the Wikimedia Foundation's goal of making the sum of all human knowledge freely available to every single human being. So without further ado, let's get to the slides. Okay, let's start with some general information. So what is the Content Translation extension? Well, the Content Translation extension is a new MediaWiki extension that we're developing. It provides an array of translation tools that make it easier to translate Wikipedia articles. Right now, it's only set up for Wikipedia, but it could be adapted for other MediaWiki-based projects. And the tools that the Content Translation extension provides are powered by a set of integrated translation services that could be potentially adaptable to other Wikimedia or MediaWiki projects. The first thing I want to do is kind of go through what our motivations for building this tool is. And the first motivation is that Wikipedia content is not evenly distributed across the different language editions or sites that make up Wikipedia. As you see on the slide here, the top 10 language editions contain 52% of all content. The top 25 language editions contain 77% of all content. And the top 50 language editions contain 90% of all content. That leaves about 230 languages which cover the rest of the content in Wikipedia. And on average, those kind of long-tail languages have about 1,500 articles. So now if you look at this chart over here on the side, you see we've got two axes here. One is page views. One is speakers. That's both native and secondary speakers. And then the size of the bubbles is how many articles there are in each edition. And each bubble represents a different language edition. And this is pulled from stats.wikimedia.org, which only looks at the top 250 languages, but the other ones are so small that wouldn't even kind of show up on the chart. So if you look, the big circle off to the right-hand side is, as you might expect, English. This circle that's kind of over to the right, but down at the bottom, that's Chinese. And the little tiny circle that's right on the 0 line is simple English. And then everything else you see, we have bubbles of varying sizes that are all kind of clustered around the origin, but none of them really exceeding that much in terms of speakers or page views, but some of them have quite a bit of content. So one of our motivations for the content translation extension is to make this distribution across Wikipedia a little more even and a little more representative of natural language speakers, and also to up the page views in other languages. Kind of our second motivation is that a lot of the content in these Wikipedia language editions only exists in certain languages. So only about 51% of the content in the German Wikipedia also exists in the English Wikipedia. That means there's approximately 50% of the German Wikipedia that you can get in German, but you can't get in English. And for each language edition, there's some local bias That's from this paper mentioned at the bottom by Scott Ahill, which means that what is found in each of these language editions differs significantly based on the language. So it's not like you have the same content that is replicated across language editions. Each language edition kind of has its own thing that it does. And we want to make the content in these language editions perhaps a bit more common and standardized, and I'll get into the reasons why that might be a good thing a little bit later. A third motivation is that multilingual users are already using translation to create new content from existing content in other languages. About 15% of Wikipedia users edit multiple language editions, and multilingual users make 30% of all edits. And of that, those 30% of all edits, 25% of that is for the same article in different languages. Actually, there's about 40% that is for different articles in different languages, but the figure that we're really interested in here is this 25%. Now, this diagram over at the side is taken from this article by Scott Ahill, and it shows the relationships between the different language editions in terms of content moving between them. And as you can see, it kind of flows along natural language family lines. The one big exception to that is English, which kind of sits in the middle. And actually, most of the edits that are done in multiple language editions, they're done in the native language edition and then also done in the English edition. So it seems like people, what they're doing is they're writing articles in their native language and then translating them into English so they can be part of the big English Wikipedia. So what that means is English has kind of become the de facto center for content in Wikipedia. So with that in mind, we have a few goals, and these goals go from more specific to more general. So our first goal is simply to make content translation faster, easier, and better. People are already doing content translation to create new articles, and we just want to encourage that and enable them to be able to do it easier. The reason we want to do that is because it will provide a way to increase the amount of new content that's created using translation, and by doing so, increase the amount of content that is in both smaller language Wikipedias and larger language Wikipedias. We also want to encourage new contributors to use translation as a starting point for contributing to Wikipedia. Right now, writing an article in Wikipedia requires a certain amount of knowledge of MediaWiki and wiki text, and translation provides a lower entry point for people who are not necessarily experts in Wikimedia, MediaWiki or wiki text, and perhaps not even experts in the subject matter they're dealing with, but want to contribute to their own language edition. And kind of the goal of all that is to promote knowledge sharing between different language communities. Right now, the content that is found in different language editions is very siloed. And when content is siloed, then knowledge is siloed. And that's not a good thing, because the more different language communities have a common body of knowledge that they share, the more that they're kind of looking at things from the same place, and the less conflict there is between these language communities and cultures. And then finally, we want to help make knowledge available to every single human being. This is something that is part of the Wikimedia mission statement. And if you think about it, the reason for making knowledge available to every single human being is that people who have more knowledge tend to make better decisions, and they tend to develop better intrinsic motivations. Okay. This project has been ongoing for about a year now, and a lot of different people have contributed to it. I just wanted to list some of the people who have been most active lately, and start with our director, Alalita Sharma, who really gave the direction and guidance and encouragement for this project to get off the ground. With her, we also have Runa Bhattacharjee, who is our Scrum Master, our QA lead, and our outreach lead. Santosh Thottingale, who is our senior engineer and handles most of the architecture work. Amir Aharoni, who is an engineer and also is serving as our product owner and product manager at the moment. Paul Geiner, who is a senior user experience designer. And then David Chan, Nicholas Lackstrom, Kartik Mistry, and myself, who are engineers on the team. So this very busy slide is my attempt to show you in a very brief period what the content translation extension actually looks like and to identify some of its key features. So as you can see, the interface is divided into 3 columns. On the left, you have the source article, which is brought in and segmented into individual paragraphs. So you don't necessarily need to translate the entire article. You can just pick individual paragraphs from it and translate those. You can either just do straight translation without any assistance, or the default is to have the paragraphs automatically machine translated when you click on the middle column there, which is your translation editor. And then over on the right-hand side, you see we have a variety of tools we provide to make the translating process easier. As part of the translation from the source article to the target article, we handle a lot of things in that process. We do things, in addition to the machine translation, we also adapt some of the wiki-specific items and for the target language. For example, we have templates. We only handle very basic templates now, but we're looking into ways to expand that. We adapt links. So if there is a link to, if there's a page in the target language that is the same as a page in the source language, and there's a link to it in the article, we actually adapt that link. So you see here where I've got it marked, source link and adapted link. The source link is a link in the Spanish Wikipedia, while the adapted link is a link in the Catalan Wikipedia. And then we also are adding support for adapting categories. So if you see just under the heading of the article there are 4 categories associated with the article in the Spanish Wikipedia. And of those, one has kind of carried over and been adapted to the Catalan Wikipedia since it already exists there. In terms of tools, we have a dictionary lookup tool, which you can use to look up words as you're translating in bilingual dictionaries. We have this MT abuse warning that comes up if you just go through and click and have everything machine translated, so that we can maintain the quality of the articles that are produced through this tool. So if you use 100% or a certain amount of machine translation in your article, you'll get this warning. And then when you actually publish the article to the target Wikipedia, it will be marked as having a high amount of machine translation in addition to being marked as being a translated article. We provide some basic text formatting, bold, italics, numbered, and bulleted lists. And then we have this link tool that shows you the links in the different editions and allows you to view those links and also remove links that you don't want in your translation from the target article. Okay. So what is this built out of? Well, it's basically built for the web at the moment. So the UI technology is HTML5 and CSS3. It is a MediaWiki extension which delivers the interface, and that part is written in PHP, but it only accounts for about 15% of the code base. And that covers both MediaWiki Core and some additional MediaWiki extensions we use, like event logging and data features. Mostly what we use PHP for is the API and also configuration. So the majority of the tool is actually written in JavaScript. It's about 85% of the code base. And we use MediaWiki and jQuery, and then the services that power our translation tools are developed in Node.js with Express. It's a RESTful web service. And so tools like link adaptation, well, not link adaptation, actually, the machine translation and the segmentation actually go out and hit our RESTful web service. And so that part of the project is something that could have applications in other areas. So in terms of components, the tool is actually made of two basic parts. There's the content translation extension itself, which is a MediaWiki extension. It provides MediaWiki integration. It provides a publishing API, which basically wraps the MediaWiki API and adds some additional parameters and actions. It serves the user interface components, which are then done on the client side in JavaScript. And it also provides us with our API client to interact with our RESTful web service. The next part is a service we call CX Server, which is written in Node and Express, and it provides the HTML article loading service via Parsoid. It provides HTML article segmentation service internally with some linear dot code that David Chan wrote. It provides the machine translation service via a open source machine translation engine called Apertium, which we have set up as a service. And it provides a dictionary lookup service, or predict lookup via the dict server, which is actually on the same machine as the CX Server web service. So with this diagram, I'm trying to illustrate the very general architecture of how the tool works. You can see there is both a source language wiki and a target language wiki, and these are just MediaWiki instances. And then the target language wiki will serve up it doesn't necessarily have to be the target language wiki, but it serves up a translation view, which is what we saw earlier. The translation view loads the source article HTML, which is brought from the source language wiki through Parsoid to our CX Server instance and then sent down to the UI. The CX Server instance also consumes the Apertium and dict services to provide some of the tools. And then it's set up for caching through Varnish, although that is optional for smaller installs. The source language wiki API is also used to adapt things like categories and links, images, templates. And then one thing I want to point out is that the translation view itself is set up so that each component in the translation view is a separate JavaScript module that they communicate through events. Now this slide looks really kind of scary because it's got a lot of text on it, but I'm not going to go through all these different steps. I put them all down because I wanted to show just how many steps are involved in translating an article from one Wikipedia edition to another. And you can see there are about 30 steps altogether. But only those steps that are in bold in the list, which is not that easy to see on the screen, there's 11 of them. Those are the only ones that require user interaction. The rest is taken care of automatically by the tool. So the general workflow is that you log into the wiki, you choose the article you want to translate, you load it up, you click the selections that you want to translate, they're automatically the source article is automatically segmented, and then the individual segments are machine translated and adapted. You do some editing in the translation editor to fix it up and correct any mistakes from the machine translation and add anything that needs to be added. And then when you've got everything done and the way you like it, you just click one publish button, and it actually publishes the article to your individual user namespace, where you can then do further editing, get it just the way you want with all the tools that MediaWiki provides, and then when it's ready for publication, you can just move it into the place where you want to move it. So on to status. So we're actually doing an announcement today of a newer version of the tool is being released in beta. You should see that coming out fairly soon. Meanwhile, development continues on the tool. We work in 2-week sprints, and we generally release every 3 sprints, so we're on that kind of cycle. A lot of that, when we finish and how soon it gets into production, depends on some infrastructure, and that, in this initial phase we're in, is taking some time to set up. But as I said, the next release is scheduled for November 2014. That's the one that's going to be announced soon. And the currently enabled language pairs that we support are Spanish to Catalan, Catalan to Spanish, Spanish to Portuguese, and Portuguese to Spanish. And the reason we started out with these languages are, well, there's several reasons. One is that Apertium has good machine translation support for these languages. And the second most important reason is that we had interested and willing communities who were willing to help us with beta testing and UX testing and things like that. Okay, so roadmap. Where do we think we're going with this? Well, in terms of features, we're continually working on adaptation improvements so that the machine translation and the adaptation of links, categories, templates, etc. is always getting better and better. And then another thing we're working on is a translation dashboard. So right now when you log into the tool, you just get a selector that lets you choose the source and target articles and the languages you want to go between. But our plan is to have a dashboard that will be the first page you hit when you go to the extension, and it will show you things like a list of translations that you've done, translations that are in progress. It will also provide suggestions for other articles you might want to translate that are related to the articles you've already translated. And in addition to these suggestions, we're also investigating new entry points so that instead of just having to go to the content translation special page to get started with the tool, there might be entry points from within different parts of Wikipedia itself. So maybe if you saw a red link for an article that didn't exist, it might provide a suggestion, say, you know, hey, this article doesn't exist in this language version of Wikipedia, but it does exist in this other version. Would you like to create it using translation? And then finally, we're looking into adding some analytics to the tool so that as we develop, we can measure what works and what doesn't, and see what kind of strategy can lead to the widespread adoption of the tool, and also track what kind of interest and what the workflow is like for the translators. In terms of language support, we're working out a set of criteria for graduating new language pairs. So that is largely going to depend on community interest, but also on the impact that a particular language pair would have in terms of generating new content. And then beyond that, there are also a lot of technical criteria that need to be applied, like do we have good machine translation support, how closely related are the languages, things like that. Ultimately, we want to introduce both non-Latin and right-to-left languages, which are a little trickier to handle in terms of things like segmentation and machine translation. And we're also investigating new machine translation providers because the translation service we're using now, Perdium, is very good for certain languages, but there are other languages it's not so good at, and there are languages, there are machine translation engines out there that would do a better job on those languages. A lot of this is powered by community outreach. One of the things I've really been impressed with since joining the project is how much this project is interacting with the community and is kind of community-driven in some ways. And that's because the team has very good outbound and inbound communication channels. There's content translation pages on MediaWiki.org for the extension. There's regular posts on the Wikimedia Foundation blog. It's actually 4 so far after today, not 3 so far. We're active on mailing lists and IRC channels. We actively participate in professional conferences and meetings so we can learn best practices and also develop the relationships we need with machine translation providers, etc. And then we do talks like this one. For inbound communication, we have user experience and beta testing that is always ongoing, so we can find out what works well, what doesn't work well, what users want, what they don't care about, which helps us develop and prioritize. And then we have had one roundtable so far where we actually got together with users and had them give us their feedback directly. So results. So in this chart you see we have the tool was initially released in the latter half of July, and in that month there were 33 new articles for Catalan that were created and published to the Catalan Wikipedia using this tool. And then it got a bit of buzz about it, and in August, which kind of corresponds to Wikimedia time, we had a huge spike in the number of articles that were created with 105. And then it's kind of settled back down in September to 36 articles. And in October, these numbers I have are only for the first part of October, so the actual number is higher than that. And one of the reasons we're tracking things like this is we want to see what we can do in terms of the development of the tool and also in terms of outreach to make the tool successful and get more people using it and just kind of get the message out there that this is a really good way to start contributing to Wikipedia and a good way to promote knowledge sharing between language communities. And that is a very quick run through of my slides. Here are the references to a couple things I used for the data in this talk. Wikipedia stats and this article by Scott A. Hale. And so feel free to look those up if you want and kind of see the problems we're trying to solve. And then I guess we're ready for questions. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me at the email address or anyone on the team.
There are 8 people viewing online, so while we give them a chance to catch up, you can just wait for a second, and then I think the rest of the questions will just come to email.
Okay. So let's wait. Oop, let's close that.
Right. Alrighty. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.